It doesn't get any more final than this for our final event. On our 2-day first ever DINFOS training days. So as I was talking about before, I hope you had a great time. But with the theme of our event this year, which is talking about achieving the information advantage for operational success, we thought it'd be a good idea to at least have a session talking about what it means to achieve the information advantage. So what I've brought with you for you today is the director of the Public Affairs and Communication Strategy Directorate. Is that right? Lieutenant Colonel Angel Jackson. And then Commander Sean Robertson, who's our acting director of the Public Affairs and Communication Strategy Qualification course, the acting academic director. So without further ado, because I know you don't want to hear me anymore, I will pass this on to them. Over to you.
Okay, I'm going to start with just a real brief introduction of myself. Commander Sean Robertson. I've been doing public affairs for 23 years of the last 23 years of 28 years that I've spent in the Navy, and have worked at levels from the Office of the Secretary of Defense down to the action officer level at the Chief of Naval Air Training. And in my ensign days, I was an action officer making all kinds of mistakes at the United States Naval Academy. So, and with that, I will turn it over to Colonel Jackson to kick things off here.
Okay. Colonel Jackson, I've been practicing public affairs inside of the military for probably the last 12 years as a public affairs officer. I enlisted as a graphic illustrator, and I worked as a graphic illustrator and a combat photographer. But even before I came into the military, I worked in public relations. I worked as a news director. And so I love this career field. I've commanded a T-PACE. I've worked at the Army Service Component Command at ARCENT, been a brigade PA. So, you know, I've spent a lot of time in this career field in and out of the uniform. So, but today we are going to talk about information advantage. And I'm going to kick it off with a short story, and I promise you it will be short. So how do you defeat 19 enemy divisions without ever engaging in combat? I'm going to tell you. So we're going to go back to World War II. In World War II, right before D-Day, the Allies knew that if they were going to liberate Europe, they needed to be able to have the Germans think they were going somewhere that they weren't. And so they launched what was called Operation Bodyguard. And Operation Bodyguard was one of the most successful military deception campaigns in history. Now, it was really a series of about 5 different campaigns, but the overall campaign was Operation Bodyguard. And so what they were trying to do was get the Germans to believe that General Patton was going to march in with all these forces and Pas-de-Calais, I can't say it that well, Pas-de-Calais. And so, but they needed to jump into Normandy. So what they did was they launched this massive campaign. They had fake inflatable tanks and wooden aircraft. They had a whole bunch of radio chatter. And this radio chatter was just as fake. And they just flooded the radios with chatter. And they also had double agents. And those double agents, they were feeding information to the German commands, letting them know, hey, General Patton's coming. And he has this massive army in Pas-de-Calais. Well, guess what? It worked. They pulled back their reserve forces. And when the Allies got ready to land into Normandy, no problem. It was a while before the Germans even figured out what was going on. And so what lesson we learned from this is that the Allies, they were able to seize the initiative because they were able to shape the perception of the enemy. And it was information. It wasn't tanks, not planes. It was information that shaped the battlefield and gave the Allies their advantage on the battlefield, all right? So this demonstrates that information advantage, it is not something that's a support function of our military operations. It is actually a critical warfighting domain. And for us, we have to make sure that we're able to give our commanders that information they need so that they can shape the battlefield before the first bullet is ever fired. Now, what is how does that look today? The success of Operation Bodyguard, it depended on controlling the narrative. And today, that's what we do. In public affairs, we control the narrative. We are that central nervous system for making sure that the narrative that we put forth is what we want. Our ability to give trusted information and build trust with individuals, that's how we seize and we hold on to the advantage.
All right. Doctrine, why does it matter? It's quite frankly, it's a basis from which that we can lean on in order to give our bosses the tools that they need to make decisions. As Colonel Jackson pointed out, information is a component of combat power, right? And it is one of the most powerful components of combat power, because information is the component of combat power that may mean that no shot is ever fired. You can have the strongest military in the world, but if your enemy doesn't believe that, you might have to go in and prove it and fire the shots. You can have the weakest military in the world, and if your enemy doesn't believe that, you may never have to fire a shot. And that's the information battle space. We are not extra. We are not something that you sprinkle public affairs onto whatever the operation is. We are a key part of the operation and the staff for our bosses that are making decisions. We talked in my last session about the fact that our commanders have responsibility for everything in the organization, and communication is one of those things. And we are a member of that staff. And one of the things that we have in common with every other member of the staff is that we have to open decision space. Our job is very simple, very simply boiled down to enabling the boss to fight the force. Whatever command we are at, it's the boss's mission to accomplish. It's the entire unit, but the boss is responsible for mission accomplishment. And we are responsible for making sure that the boss can make those decisions and for building her decision space. We also need to protect friendly information. We need to be part. It is not simply a public affairs function to determine what critical information is and to develop a critical information list, but public affairs is most certainly part of that function. We need to determine what friendly information needs to be protected. Operations security it's a security officer function. It's an operations officer function, and it's most certainly a public affairs officer's function. When it comes to domestic audiences, public affairs is the inform. We are the inform piece, and we inform and educate and put in context for our domestic audiences information about our military. Foreign audiences. Information is absolutely key with foreign audiences. We also serve the inform function there. Public affairs is straight up. We are the boundary spanners. The education that we do there influences how they see us and what the reputation of the United States military and the Department of War is throughout the world. And we conduct information warfare. We are not information operations. We don't do information operations, but we absolutely, as part of public affairs, are operators in the information warfare space. And we need to make sure that we recognize that. We are the informed piece of that. We are the context piece of that. But what we do and the information that we are putting out is absolutely part of the information warfare space, and we need to make sure that we're a part of that. I'm going to draw on a couple of examples, and I want to preface this by saying that I'm going back to my last operational experience, which was a couple of years ago when I was the public affairs officer for 3rd Fleet. So I am absolutely not operating in the current information space, and I definitely don't want to step on some of what they're, on anything that they're doing there now or be misconstrued in that way, shape, or form. But I learned an awful lot in that space. We deployed aircraft carriers. 3rd Fleet is responsible for getting the aircraft, whether we're deploying them to the Western Pacific, whether we're deploying them, whether we're deploying an amphibious ready group. While I was there, we deployed Macon Island, and they went through 3rd, 7th, 5th, all the way over into 6th Fleet from the West Coast. Sometimes when we deployed, we were out there, we were talking about the deployment. The ship was getting ready to set sail from San Diego, and we were saying, hey, this team is going, we are getting out there. Other times, we were saying, we were not saying a word. We would wait to talk about the fact that we had 100,000 tons of American diplomacy in Guam, in the South China Sea, in the Indian Ocean. When we choose to release that information, when the boss chooses to release that information, is very much a part of what is going on. We conduct regular tests out of the Pacific Missile Range facility. Sometimes we talk about them all day long. Sometimes we don't talk about them at all. But those decisions and the information that we're releasing are critical to shaping the information space and a part of warfare in the information. Am I still on? Okay. One of the things that I got from one of my bosses out at 3rd Fleet, Admiral Boyle, is he was consistently talking about the fact that we are never in steady state operations. We are always shaping the battlefield. And shaping the battlefield is about information, and that's about public affairs being there to put the story in context and to put the information in context and shape the narrative that our bosses are trying to shape.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about doctrine. We've given you some examples from history and some a little bit more current to today, but we can't stop there, because in order for us to achieve true information advantage, we have to understand those challenges that are emerging right now, challenges that are going to shape what we do in the future. Like, how do we operate tomorrow? And so we're going to go through a couple of those emerging challenges. Speed. So information is global. We all know when information is put out, it can be around the world in seconds. What's that old adage, is the disinformation, you can travel the world, travel across the world before the truth has its boots on, something like that. I know it's like a couple of different ways to say it, but yes, information is global. And so for us, the challenge is not just being accurate, it's being accurate at speed. We have to make sure that we are not only telling the truth, but we're getting it out there faster than our adversaries can, which is not always easy. Credibility. It's the center of gravity. That's our center of gravity, making sure that we're credible when we put information out. It's almost impossible to regain it if you lose it. And there are plenty of examples out there, like I often use with our students here, the Fort Hood situation. And it's not that the public affairs personnel weren't doing their job. They were deployed. And so by the time that information got out, it was just what the American people saw, even what some soldiers were seeing, it wasn't even the truth on the ground, but we lost that credibility. And we'll never, ever, ever get that narrative back. Deep fakes. Deep fakes threaten what we do right now. I know the schoolhouse, we're working through what's called digital content provenance to make sure that there's authenticity. The authenticity remains in the content that we produce. I know Divots they have the, what is it called, Scott? The content credential logo on our content on Divots. And so if you can imagine, if you're looking at an American general who says we're pulling out of some theater of operations, and it's fake, that's quite possible. So that's one of the things that we have to battle with right now. And so for us as PAs, our role is to establish the truth, provenance, and context, like Commander Robertson said early. We need to do all of that early on, at speed. Integration. So information advantage, it's not owned by one function. You have IO, PSYOP, operations, intel, public affairs, electronic warfare, cyber. We all work together. That is something that we all own. We can't do it by ourselves, and neither can any of them. That is something that we do together. And so public affairs have to be at the planning table. Like Commander Robinson said, if you sprinkle it on after the fact, you might as well have just left them out. We have to be at the table. And so we provide commanders with that understanding that they need in the information environment, just like they need to understand logistics, just like they need to understand the terrain. They have to understand the information environment, and that's where we come in. Technology. So our adversaries, they're just as good as we are about putting things out when it comes to technology. They can do it, and in some instances, they can do it quicker than we can. If Ukraine hasn't taught us anything else, it's that all that money we're spending on drones and stuff like that, they are out there using this technology to fight a war that people thought would be over pretty soon. They can exploit social media. They weaponize hacked accounts. I don't know if anybody's ever been in an organization where your account has been hacked or your website has been hacked, but those are the things that we have to deal with. And as for public affairs, we have the challenge of making sure that our platforms are secure, whether it's our social media platforms, which they're not ours and we're not owning them. We usually have passwords and things like that that we share to get into certain sites. Are we protecting these things? Are we changing them the way that we should? And are we staying fast and relevant on the sites that we're using? And so we have to make sure we're understanding and properly using and protecting the technology that we use. And competition below armed conflict. Now, the fight for information advantage, and Sean mentioned it, it does not start. It doesn't start when bullets start flying. It's all the time, all day, every day, all the time, shaping the narrative constantly. That's why we do what we do both in garrison and while we're deployed. When we want somebody to know how powerful our Navy or our Army is, we don't wait until we get ready to go. We're constantly messaging that. We're constantly talking about our capabilities. That's how you get out in front of a narrative. Our competitors, they're able to shape perceptions. They sow doubt, they erode trust. That's what our competitors are doing. And for public affairs, it's not just about us responding during a crisis, it's about us persistently and consistently shaping that narrative, even in peacetime. So speed, credibility, integration, technology, and competition below armed conflict. So these aren't separate issues. They're all connected. And how we address them, that determines if we maintain the information advantage or if we surrender it to our enemies. So for key things for our PA professionals, we got to be that trusted voice. We have to understand how to integrate with operations, and we have to know how to master the environment, whether that be tools or how we actually use technology, AI policies, understanding our adversaries' tactics. That's where we come in, and that's how we get to information advantage. Because if we don't tell our story, somebody else will, and they're not going to tell it the way we want them to.
Yeah, and I am probably a broken record on this. We have got to be at the planning table. We are not useful to our organizations if we are not in the planning room, because one, we don't understand what went behind the planning. All we can do at that point is talk about what it is we're doing, but we don't understand what's going on. You know, one of the pieces that we talk about with all our students, and I probably use it 10 times in an iteration, is, you know, it's not about the planning, it's not about the plan, excuse me, it's about the planning. It's about knowing the plan, because how many plans survive first contact? 0, right? But if you understand the plan and you've been part of the plan, you can adjust the plan to overcome the new obstacles, right? And for our young people, for you know, up and coming professionals, you're not always going to feel like you have the most important thing to say in that planning room. And it takes time, but you have to be in the planning room in order to be able to get comfortable in the planning room. You cannot become a trusted voice until you have a voice. And if you're not in the room, you don't have a voice. The other one is master our environment. So the last piece is you have to understand the information environment. And I can tell you, when I started doing this back in 2002, it was all about embedding media. I mean, that was it. It was about sending traditional media out so that they could understand. They got their context from understanding and being alongside of our troops. There are so many media organizations, and you don't even necessarily have to be a media organization to have a voice now, but we could not function that way right now, you know, and just embed every correspondent, you know, that was going to be trusted on a thing with all of our troops. The media landscape has changed, but we need to stay with those changes that are going on, and they're happening so fast right now. It's not even funny. So with that, I think we're ready to open it up for some of your questions, and I will ask, who has the first question?
Remember, we're on live stream, so if you can come over here and get on the mic, make sure it's turned on. It is turned on.
I want to suggest a DINFOS project opportunity, and that deals with the Key Bridge collapse and rebuild. What you will find, and I really didn't know this until one of the Coast Guard folks mentioned this earlier. You have the Coast Guard, Army Corps of Engineers, Baltimore, Maryland Ports Authority, the entire Maryland delegation, the feds once in a while, ecology groups, things of that nature, who are following this many years long project. If you guys could get imagery and keep a lot of the stories together, I think you could build an excellent presentation on cooperation, military and civilian. My colleagues, I used to work for the Corps of Engineers in Baltimore, so they are assisting in removing the bridge portions that are there now. Somebody has designed the bridge. Who's going to put out the contract and get the contract, et cetera? All sorts of components. Who's going to continue to do the photos? If we get them from Maryland Ports Authority, that's great. Coast Guard is always out on the water. They could do that. I think the rebuild for that bridge would be an excellent opportunity here to show that subject of military-civilian cooperation.
So I will tell you, for every iteration of our PAX-Q course, the Army, for Army Service Unique, we bring in the Corps of Engineers every iteration, and they come and brief that case study to our Army students.
Oh, good. Oh, good. But it's not going to go away. It's another 2 or 3 years, I think, till they finally cut the ribbon and have people go across. But I think it's a great project.
Thank you.
You can go across first, Cliff.
All right, who's got the next question?
Morning, sir, ma'am. I guess the question I have is, with the changing media environment and how legacy media, I don't think it's ever going to go away, but I think it's going to shrink and it's going to be replaced by this new world we live in. How do you see us, like our traditional, kind of how you said in 2002, that we dealt almost solely embedding media? If we were to do that same strategy with social media influencers and stuff, we're going to have to rethink our policies and things of that nature. How do you see us navigating that world?
I guess I'll start. I think we've already started to navigate that world. I think just about every service has influencers. We all send our leaders to speak on podcasts, YouTube channels. I think we're already navigating the space where it's not just traditional media, and we've been doing it for some time now. I feel like we're going to have to continue to evolve in those spaces, because that's the only way we remain relevant. That's the only way, that's how we understand the information environment, by us being in it. We just can't wait until we get ready to do, some operation or exercise to try to figure out how to use a tool. We're constantly using these tools, and that's for every single service. And so, true, I don't think legacy media will go anywhere. Just like radio didn't go anywhere when TV came along. I think we continue to use all of our spaces, and we get smart on how to use them. So
I think we're going to make mistakes, but frankly, I think we lean back on communication principles. The outlets, yes, the outlets are changing, but in sometimes they're not. But there are new patterns and new things coming in all the time. And even the nature of social media is continually changing. Whereas it was Facebook and Twitter for an awful long time. Instagram has made huge followings, and there's social media landscape is continually changing. I mean, my first Command social media page was a MySpace page. So it's been a while. But the core principles of being first with the truth and maximum disclosure and minimum delay and finding the channels that our stakeholders pay attention to and using those channels to communicate to our audiences remain very much the same principles. And the idea is that when you look at communication theory, thought leaders have been around for an awfully long time, right? I want to say it was back in the 60s when they did it was either the 60s or the 70s when they did the study with corn out in the Midwest. And how do you get people to plant a certain kind of corn? You get the opinion leaders. If you get to the opinion leaders first, and can talk to the opinion leaders, people will follow them. That absolutely hasn't changed with social media. We're going to the opinion leaders. The opinion leaders themselves are just using new platforms. Did that answer your question? Yes, sir. Great.
All right, so my question is, do we really have a seat at the table, specifically public affairs? I've been watching this thing going on for 20 years, right? And I feel like we don't necessarily have a seat at the table. So do you guys have any examples, maybe anyone else in the crowd, where a commanding general truly includes public affairs next to IO and all the other entities, and the information is a warfighting function? Do you see that evolving? Because I don't necessarily see it.
I do, it depends. It depends. And I will tell you, for every command that I've ever worked for, they truly understood what public affairs brings to the table. I think, for me, my first, I'm going to always take a seat at the table, and I'm just going to tell you that right now. Like, when I'm asked to do a job in the Army, and right now that job is a public affairs officer, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. I'm jumping in with my whole self, right? And so my first position as a brigade public affairs officer, my boss at the time was the XO, and then the brigade commander was my senior rater. Who was my senior rater? He was the brigade commander. But my boss, my immediate boss, he looked at me and said, "Angel, I honestly don't know what you do." And you know what I said to him? "Oh, sir, don't worry about it. I do. I got it." So when we're in the middle of NTC and we're walking through a sand table, because I've sat in every planning event up to NTC, I've engaged with all of the companies to know what they're bringing to the table, the battalions. I've integrated into this brigade, this armored brigade combat team. When we're out at NTC and we're doing a sand table of how we're going to navigate things, I'm right there. I'm telling you exactly what public affairs is doing. Now, we didn't have electronic warfare, and they made me play that role too. So that was another part of it I probably didn't do so well, because I really don't know EW. But when you actually go through, like Sean was saying, you do those things, it makes you smarter. It makes you better at understanding what you're supposed to do when you walk into the room as a public affairs officer. We tell our students, I tell the students all the time when they get here, graduating PAX-Q is not going to make you a subject matter expert. Experience will. That experience comes in, and then you are better equipped to make sure you're at the table. You're in planning meetings, and you know what to listen for when you're in planning meetings. So it does take time. And I think if you have a good commander, they absolutely know what to do with public affairs, and they bring them bring them to the table.
So I would say this: yes and no. Frankly, I've been the public affairs officer that could not get a seat at the table to save my life. I've also been the public affairs officer that's been able to walk in there and say, when I opened up my mouth, people listened to what I had to say. Some of it has to do with your leadership. So a lot of it, frankly, has to do with how many cups of coffee you have with other members of the staff.
Yep.
And how well, and the trust that not the boss, but the rest of the staff has in you. If your seat at the table is for you having access to the boss, you're probably going to struggle. If your seat at the table is having access to every other member of the staff, so that when an issue comes up in front of the boss, they're looking to you to support what they're saying, and you're looking to them to support what you're saying, you're going to have that seat at the table. I'll plug a couple of our fantastic public affairs officers, Captain Becky Rabarich, who is the public affairs officer at Indo-PACOM. She absolutely has a seat at the table, and she has for the majority of her career, because she has just been absolutely excellent. And yeah, our good PAOs, no matter what the service, they absolutely have a seat at the table.
And I think as public affairs, you have to be able to speak the language of the unit that you're in. That helps you get a seat at the table. So if I'm going into an Armored Brigade combat team, I need to know what this Armored Brigade combat team is made up of. I need to know what their mission is. I need to know what they do. It's not about me sending some troops out to go take some, good video and photos for what? I have to be able to understand this organization and where I fit in. How can I help the commander achieve his or her objectives? And it doesn't matter where I am. And so, if you don't get a seat at the table if you don't bother to understand the organization that you're sitting in.
So I had a real quick comment on that too, sir, is I think the leadership that's coming up now, unlike some of us who are, Gen X, boomers, they're so much more information savvy that I think they're going to be looking, as the leaders come up, they're going to be looking for, hey, where's my PAO? Because I want to be in the information space. I think that's part of it. But the thing that you said about the planning and the relationship building that goes on below the leadership level builds those relationships that your peers are like, where's PAO? We can't do this without PAO. And then when you're also in those meetings and they don't call out PAO and you're recognizing that your commander has an issue, like you can hear him like he's worried about something. Get back to your desk, get back to your team and says, hey, the commander's worried about this. What kind of communication support can we give to the solution of that? Communication is not always the solution, but communication is always part of the solution. So I think doing it behind the scenes because your boss is concerned about something, already thinking ahead, saying, you know what, with my team, I can support fixing that issue by this. And so the next time you meet, you know what, I got some things I'd like to share with you on how we think we can help that problem. So you're not even waiting for it, you're just doing it and then building those relationships. So I was making sure he didn't sit over there to ask the question, so he came to the mic. You'll get him.
Colonel, something you said sparked a thought for me, which is we're here at training days, and you as you were integrating into your unit, participated in the training, and then you were integrated into the training and the planning, and I think that's a critical part of how you get accepted by the operators and how you teach your commanders your value. Is you have to find where I saw it in my entire career in the Navy, where it was most successful for me was we integrated into Tier 1 training at PACOM back before it was Indo-PACOM. And we involved the entire staff. We brought in extra reserve help, and we stood up a whole mock for the entire exercise. And we worked every officer to the bone, every senior leader to the bone. But when they needed us, they saw the value, and we were integrated into the planning and the op. And it's hard to do. I mean, I understand it's hard to do, and sometimes it's hard to get it started. But if you can do that, if you can get the command to let you train the staff in a realistic way, they're going to be more willing to accept you for that seat at the table because they see your value and they see what you bring. So I just want to make that point.
Oh, absolutely. I will tell you, my introduction into the officer corps in the Army was in air defense. I was commissioned as an air defense officer. We do a lot of planning. And so I haven't been to too many, I don't think there's been a single organization where we don't sit down and we plan. And so when I started to do this as a public affairs officer, it came natural for me to sit at the table. Okay, we're doing MD&P. Okay, let me figure out what that means for me. And at first, I didn't really understand it, but I got my nose in doctrine. I called some people. And so Mr. Johnson can probably tell you, I call him, I don't care what it is that I'm doing, either for an asthma check or it's something I've never done before, I'm calling Mr. Rivers Johnson all day, every day. And so when I first started, out in this career field, I'm trying to transition what I learned as an air defense officer, what I've learned as an AG officer, and how can I morph, myself into a good public affairs officer based on the experience of planning. You know what I mean? And so you're right. It's not going to come overnight, and it is hard when you first start. But when you do it, the more you do it, the easier it becomes, which is why we've placed a lot of emphasis here in the schoolhouse on our students understanding that, planning is a huge part of what you're going to do. That's how you get to success. And so we have a lot that they think they're going to come here and do what the enlisted soldiers do over here, where they're, taking photos. Some of them think that, I'm going to leave here and do a podcast. You're going to leave here and be a PA planner is what you're going to do. Like you're going to lead a PA shop or be a part of a PA shop that has to give a command what they need to be successful. And so you are absolutely right.
Planned question. So beyond public affairs and communications strategy qualification course, where can folks learn more about what you're talking about today here at the schoolhouse?
Glad you asked.
Great question,
we
Mel.
We have a number of courses here at DINFOS. And so one of those is the Joint Contingency Public Affairs course. And so this is the course that follows on from PAX-Q. And so our senior NCOs and our officers and civilians, after you've completed PAX-Q, you can go and you can get a deep dive into how to plan for public relations. It is a serious deep dive. And so when I tell you, I sat down with the team and we went through this course with a fine-tooth comb, and we have a real good team of people in there. I think Ms. Milhoan is in here, right here, and Mr. Gary Boucher. They are the two individuals that lead that team right now, and they do a really good job of taking individuals who think they know nothing about planning to getting them to be able to, okay, now I understand this. And we get really good reviews. And on top of that, Ms. Mel Weatherspoon, she leads our mobile training team. Excited to go out to do training with anybody for anybody. We understand you can't send everybody back to the schoolhouse. Don't worry about it. We'll come to you. We'll come to you to train your teams. Earlier this year, I was in what do you call it, Kenya, doing an exercise, Justified Accord, and I started out with the planning piece of the exercise, the academics for them, and we went through an entire week of how do you do this, how do you plan for public affairs inside of an operation. And I know, Sean, where did you go? You were
Armenia.
And getting ready to go again, right?
Yep.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so it was very simple. I taught the 5-day version of PAX in really in 5 days. It was absolutely a broad survey, but one, it was about building a relationship with a critical partner, right? I mean, it was essentially I went over there and basically had a cup of coffee with the Armenian team for a week, and we got down to some of their issues, and result of that is hopefully, provided everything works out at this point, it looks that myself and Captain Bonenkamp, one of our other instructors here, should be going back over there in November to do a public affairs exercise.
And we have folks who are who are headed to Hawaii, San Diego. Like we send our instructors far and wide. As long as you can get us there, we can give you the training. And it doesn't have to be training that you see on the DINFOS website. The one thing Ms. Weatherspoon is really good at is listening to what you need. What is it that you need? What training objective are you trying to reach? What capability are you trying to get to? We can help you get there. We have a schoolhouse full of very smart people. And not just from a public affairs perspective, from a visual information perspective as well. We can help you get there. You need writing, you need graphics, you need video, You need your photographers and videographers to understand how to actually plan for to support an operation or to support an exercise. We got you. So whatever training that you need, whether it's an information advantage or how to do something technical, DINFOS can provide you with that. Also, we have Pavilion. Pavilion has a lot of great resources on there. A lot of great resources. So if you're ever looking for something that you can kind of teach yourself or teach your team, there are some good training aids right there on Pavilion, and you can get to that link from the DINFOS website.
Okay, I'm looking at the time, and I'm thinking we have time for one more question. So I'm going to say, who has the last question?
Come on, somebody's got one more question. Who's got it? Oh, yeah. You know what? It's a good one.
Thanks, everyone, for your kind words. Come up here. I had a question about unification of voice on down from command leadership, especially with consistency and what kind of role that consistent messaging can play when combating, some things in the operational environment, but then just the importance overall of what, unification of voice means for a command or an agency. Thanks.
So unification of voice is really it's the whole game. I mean, frankly, that's the ball game, right? We might not all be saying exactly the same thing, but the way that it was likened in the early days, and there used to be a graphic in one of the joint pubs about this, is that it's like an orchestra, right? Each individual instrument, they all have their own voices, but when they're all singing the same tune, and they make beautiful music, and people get an understanding of it. And that's where, the boss may just be the conductor, right? Or he may be the loudest instrument. But the subject matter experts, the medical people that know what's going on, the operators that know what's going on, the legal officer maybe that each of them are fighting a different piece of the battle, right? They are all subject matter experts in their own hands. If they're telling the same story from their perspective, that is communication. And that's a unified voice. Not a voice where everybody is saying the same thing. Everybody is providing the context of their own piece and their piece of the orchestra.
If you take a look at, if you ever have the opportunity to actually look up Operation Bodyguard, it was so smooth. You have people all over this country that are in 5 different mini deception campaigns. And they got the Germans to believe exactly what they wanted them to believe. You don't get to that with everybody not on the same page, without everybody speaking with one voice. They were all talking, knowing that they were lying, but they were synchronized lying. And it worked. And so, and that goes for any operation or any event that you decided you want to, that you're going to participate in from a public affairs perspective. I will tell you, I nerd out on military planning sometimes. I really do, especially when I am doing the public affairs piece to that, because I'm always looking for how can I dip my toe in whatever piece it is. And it's kind of like using a Rubik's Cube for me to try to figure out where are we going to fit, how are we going to do it. And so if you're doing your due diligence to understand every piece of an operation, you've read the entire op order, which a lot of people don't like to do. You got to read the whole op order. Then you know where you fit. You can speak the language of the 2 or of the 4, the G4, the J1 or whoever. You can speak the language because you've read the whole order and you understand where you fit. And so when we talk about speaking the same language, it's not just speaking the same language from a public affairs perspective, it's also speaking the same language from an operational perspective with the team that you work with. So that is like Commander Robertson said, that's the whole thing. That's the whole piece of it.
I'm sorry, you've baited me one time too many about Operation Bodyguard. So Operation Mincemeat, of course, was related to that. And British military intelligence, including Ian Fleming, there were 3 guys who planned this thing. And they took a Welsh guy who had died drunk in London. They saved his body for 6 months. They froze it. They then put him on a plane, crashed the plane with photographs of his girlfriend and military plans about the Normandy invasion and everything like that. Fishermen found him off the coast of Nazi-occupied Spain. They brought him in for a routine autopsy. It was really hot. The Germans smelled a rat, but the body was starting to stink. And it was cocktail hour, and they said, let's break this up till tomorrow. And the Germans were very eager to impress their supervisors. So they played upon that. And so when you're conducting these sorts of campaigns, you have to look at the audience, but also they kicked back and said, wow, that worked great. What else can we do? What's mincemeat too? And they said, we can't pull it off. There's just too much need for secrecy, too many moving parts. So it's just interesting, all the assessments that are needed there. That's all I wanted to say. When you brought it up again, I had to go there.
It was amazing, and I do encourage people to go read it. I do want to do one last plug. Divots, divots, divots. There are people out there who do not use divots, and it makes me itch. Divots is the platform that we use to archive all of the content that we have. That is, Scott Best, and I know you've already done a session on that, but when we talk about how we stay on the same page, when we talk about how we synchronize with each other, that's one of the platforms that we have that I don't know another military or another country who has what we have in divots. Nobody. When I went to Kenya, they were trying to figure out how they can get it. I told them, I don't know how you can get it, but I can show you that it works. Like this is what we use. It is our system of record. And so if you have a team, or if you are one of those individuals who thinks social media is going to, save your content, or that's going to allow you to get out and get first, don't be surprised if you throw something on social media that you didn't put on divots and it starts doing something you don't want it to do because you didn't archive it right first. So just my little plug for divots. I have a love relationship with that system that we have.
Can I just make one comment?
Absolutely.
All right, so gentleman came up and talked about the Key Bridge, right? Coast Guard, where's the Coast Guard guy? There he is, right there. He talked about the Key Bridge. A feature page synchronizes it all. So they created a feature page, and that was the success. So that's a way that you can synchronize messages, right? So we're talking about unity of voice or what have you, but FBI just signed on, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, U.S. Department of Agriculture Force, U.S. Department of Agriculture, White House communication agencies looking at how we've done things in the cloud, and they want to get on board. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we could synchronize messages between the Department of War, Department of State, the whole 9 yards? And DIVIDS is that central capability that can help do that.
Ma'am, if you want to take us home, it's time to wrap up this amazing event.
Yes, so thank you for all of you for attending, whether you're virtually online or you're here, you decided to come here to DINFOS. We really appreciate you all coming back. We like having the opportunity to bring those of us in the community, all of you, back to the schoolhouse to kind of, have a conversation, see what we're doing here, ask you what is it that you need. That's what we're here for. DINFOS is that place that allows us to help us grow. And so thank each and every one of you for coming back. I do encourage you, you will get an email, I believe, in order to do the survey. Please fill out the survey. Let us know what we can do better for the next iteration of DINFOS training days. And so, yeah, you have any pointers for us, or you have something that you want to see, let us know. We can make that work. We got a whole year to work on it. Yeah, and I think that's all we have. Safe travels if you, flew in or anything like that. If you drove, be careful out there on those DMV streets. And so, and I hope each of you, yes, especially now. I hope each of you decide to come back again tomorrow. And that's all I have.
Tomorrow I'm
I'm
off.
sorry, next year. Yeah, I'm off. Me too. Not tomorrow. Next year.
All right, so I brought the bucket, so you don't have to walk all the way to the table. So if you want to drop your lanyard in the bucket, you'll hear from me later. She's over.